A robot at Columbia University just taught itself to speak by staring at its own reflection in a mirror. And honestly, that sentence alone should make you a little uneasy.
Yeah, I read this and my first reaction was, cool, followed immediately by wait, should I be worried? Because this isn't some CGI demo or a deepfake video. This is a physical robot sitting in a lab, looking at itself, learning how its own face works.
So let's break down what actually happened here. The robot is called EMO, built by Hod Lipson's Creative Machines lab at Columbia Engineering. The study was published in Science Robotics on January 15th, 2026, and the core idea is wild. EMO has 26 separate motors in its face, each capable of moving in up to 10 degrees of freedom. That's a lot of tiny moving parts under a layer of flexible silicone skin.
And the problem they were trying to solve is one that's haunted robotics for decades: lip movement. When people talk face to face, nearly half of their attention goes to the movement of the lips. We are hyper-tuned to notice when something is off about a face. You can forgive a robot for walking funny or having clumsy hands, but the moment something is slightly wrong with how a mouth moves, your brain screams, nope.
That's the uncanny valley, right? This concept that as robots get more and more human looking, there's this dip where they become deeply unsettling before they cross over into actually convincing, and lip sync has always been one of the biggest triggers. Even the most advanced humanoid robots before this looked like ventriloquist dummies when they tried to talk.
So here's what Columbia did differently. Instead of programming rules like when you hear the sound B, close your lips, they let Emo learn through observation. Two phases. Phase one, the mirror.
They literally sat this robot in front of a mirror and let it make thousands of random facial movements. It's just sitting there, pulling faces at itself, watching what happens. Every time a motor fires, it sees the result in the mirror. Over time, it builds what they call a vision to action model. Basically, it learns the relationship between I send this signal to motor number 14 and my lower lip moves this way.
And this is where it gets philosophically interesting, because that process, that's not that different from what human babies do. Infants spend a huge amount of time exploring their own faces. They stick out their tongues, they open and close their mouths, they watch adults and try to imitate. Emo is doing essentially the same thing, just with motors instead of muscles.
Phase 2 is where it gets even cooler. After Emo understood its own face, the researchers sat it in front of hours of YouTube videos. Humans talking, humans singing, different languages, different accents, and Emo watched all of that and learned to map the sounds it heard to the lip movements it saw and then translate those into its own motor commands.
No one told it what an O shape means or how to form a TH sound. It figured that out by watching us. And eventually, it could take spoken audio in 10 different languages and synchronize its lips near perfectly.
10 languages without understanding a single word. It doesn't know what it's saying, it just knows what mouths look like when they make certain sounds.
Hod Lipson did mention they had trouble with certain sounds. Hard consonants like B and puckered sounds like W were difficult, which makes total sense because those require really precise lip closure and tension that's hard to replicate with silicone and motors.
But here's the thing that makes this more than just a cool engineering demo. They tested this against real humans. They showed videos of emo speaking using 3 different methods to 1,300 volunteers: the mirror learning method, an amplitude based approach where the mouth just moves based on how loud the audio is, and a nearest neighbor method where it mimics movements it has seen before.
The volunteers picked the mirror learning approach as the most natural looking over 62% of the time. The amplitude method only got picked 23%, and the nearest neighbor got about 14%, so it wasn't even close. The self taught approach crushed the alternatives.
Now I want to zoom out a little and talk about the mirror test, because this word mirror is doing a lot of heavy lifting in this story, and it connects to something much bigger in science.
Oh, we are absolutely going there.
So the mirror test, also called the Mark test, was developed by psychologist Gordon Gallup Jr. in 1970. The idea is simple. You put a mark on an animal's face where it can't see it, then you put the animal in front of a mirror. If the animal uses the mirror to investigate the mark on its own body, it demonstrates self-recognition. It understands that the thing in the mirror is itself.
And for decades, this has been considered one of the gold standards for measuring self awareness in animals. Great apes pass it, bonobos, chimps, orangutans, gorillas, bottlenose dolphins pass it, Asian elephants pass it, magpies pass it, which blew everyone's minds because that's a bird with a brain the size of a walnut.
Even some fish have shown behaviors that suggest mirror self-recognition. Cleaner wrasse, this tiny little fish, appeared to pass a modified version of the test in 2019, which caused a huge debate about what the test actually measures.
And that's the key tension here. Does passing the mirror test mean you're self aware, or does it just mean you understand visual feedback? Because Emo is using a mirror, but nobody is claiming Emo is self aware. It's using the mirror as a tool to build a model of its own face. That's functional self modeling, not consciousness.
Right, but here's where it gets blurry. When a chimp uses a mirror to pick food out of its teeth, is that fundamentally different from what Emmo is doing? Both are using visual feedback to understand and control their own bodies. The chimp has subjective experience and Emo presumably doesn't, but from a behavioral standpoint, the process is remarkably similar.
And that's going to become a much bigger question as robots get more sophisticated. If a robot can model its own body, predict how its actions will look to others, and adjust its behavior based on self observation, at what point does the distinction between self model and self awareness start to feel like we're splitting hairs?
Lipson actually has a quote about this. He says Emo's approach is a step towards self aware robots in a functional sense. Not that the robot is conscious, but that it has a working model of itself that it uses to interact with the world. And he's been talking about machine self models for years.
Okay, let's talk about where this is heading. Because lip sync is impressive, but it's clearly just the beginning. The paper was published in Science Robotics, which means this is peer reviewed, replicable, serious science, and the method, using self observation to learn body control, isn't limited to faces.
Right? Imagine a humanoid robot that learns to walk by watching itself in a full length mirror, or learns to use its hands by watching its own fingers manipulate objects. The mirror becomes a universal training tool for embodied AI. You don't need to program the physics of every joint and muscle, you let the robot figure it out by watching itself.
And Lipson said something really interesting. The more it interacts with humans, the better it will get. So this isn't a static achievement. Emo is designed to keep improving through continued interaction, which means every conversation it has, every face it watches, makes it more convincing.
Which brings us to the practical applications. Think about elderly care robots that need to communicate naturally with people who might have hearing difficulties and rely on lip reading. Think about sign language interpretation, therapy robots for children with autism who need consistent patient facial interaction. The ability to move lips naturally is not just about looking cool, it's functional.
And on the flip side, think about the implications for deception. If a robot can perfectly mimic human lip movements and you combine that with realistic skin, realistic eyes, realistic voice synthesis, you're getting very close to a machine that could pass as human in a video call.
The deepfake angle is real right now. One of the ways we detect deepfakes is by looking for weird lip movements. If physical robots can nail lip sync, the software won't be far behind. Actually, the software is already ahead in some ways, but having it validated in physical hardware gives the whole field more credibility.
Let's also talk about the uncanny valley research more broadly, because there's been this assumption for a long time that we'd eventually just build robots that cross the valley, that we'd make them so realistic they stop being creepy, but some researchers think that's the wrong approach entirely.
Yeah, there's a school of thought that says we should lean into the non human aspects of robots, make them clearly robotic but expressive. Think Wall E versus a humanoid. Wall E doesn't have lips at all, but he communicates emotion beautifully through simple movements and sounds.
But Lipson's work suggests the other path is also viable. If you can nail the details, if you can get the lips right, the micro expressions right, the timing right, you can come out the other side of the uncanny valley. And EMO's test results with 62% of humans preferring its lip sync suggest it's actually working.
One thing I want to highlight is the 26 motors thing. Your face has over 40 muscles, and they work in incredibly complex combinations. Emo has 26 motors, which is fewer, but each one can move in up to 10 degrees of freedom. So the total space of possible expressions is enormous, and it learned to navigate that space through self-experimentation, not programming.
That's what makes this fundamentally different from previous attempts. Older lip sync robots used lookup tables, sound maps to mouth shape B, that's like acting from a script without understanding the scene. Emo learned the way an actor learns, by feeling the movements, watching the results, and developing intuition.
And the fact that it works across 10 languages without any language-specific training is huge. It means the system learns something universal about how human mouths work with sound. It's not English-specific or Mandarin-specific, it found the underlying patterns.
Which makes sense, because mouths are mouths. The physics of making a P sound is basically the same whether you're speaking Japanese or Portuguese. Your lips close, pressure builds up, and then they pop open. EMO figured that out from observation.
So where does this go from here? Lipson's lab has already released what they're calling Emo's debut album, titled Hello World with an underscore, the robot singing actual songs with synchronized lip movements. It's a flex, but it also demonstrates the range of the system beyond just speech.
I think the bigger picture is that we're entering an era where robots learn about themselves the way biological creatures do. Through exploration, through mirrors, through watching others, and the philosophical questions that raises about the nature of self-knowledge, about what it means to have a body and understand it, those questions are only going to get louder.
And I think that's what makes this story so compelling. It's not just robot moves lips good, it's robot discovers its own face. That framing changes everything about how we think about machine learning and embodiment.
Absolutely. The mirror has been a symbol of self-knowledge since ancient mythology. Narcissus, the evil queen in Snow White, the philosophical thought experiments about what it means to recognize yourself, and now a robot in a Columbia lab is using one to learn how to talk.
If you told someone in 2020 that within 6 years a robot would teach itself to speak by watching itself in a mirror and binge watching YouTube, they would have assumed you were describing a sci fi movie.
And yet, here we are, episode 64. Things I know nothing about, or at least things we knew nothing about until we looked in the mirror.
That's the show. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.